I heard a scream and I looked back and it was Sunni screaming for me. No one else in the boat heard the scream. Why is she in the water and how did we leave her? With my life jacket on, I picked her up. She had a life jacket on, everything. I picked her up. As soon as I got her to the back of the boat, I knew she was dead. Holding Sunni's lifeless hand, kneeling down with Camille next to me, I said, "My dear Heavenly Father," the next words needed to be, "I'm thankful for this day."
You couldn't say it.
I just sat there in shock. I don't think I could ever say that I'm thankful for that day.
This is the Lost Child Podcast, where we delve into the topic of losing a child. These are real stories from real people, sharing some of their darkest moments with us and their journey from that fateful experience. If you're grieving, I hope that you find hope and healing in these stories and you can relate to some of them. If you're supporting someone that's grieving, hopefully you can gain insight into what they're thinking and feeling. As a reminder, our guests are sharing some of their most guarded and precious spiritual and emotional experiences with us. Please keep that in mind when making comments on the video or the podcast. We have a guest with us here today, and he's going to tell us a little bit about his story. Let's dive into the podcast.
This one's going to be a little bit different. As you can see, I'm in the yellow chair. I'm getting interviewed by Christy, who was our inaugural podcast interviewee. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that. We decided to have somebody who has experienced child loss interview us so they can relate and maybe have some more insight or questions. So I'm not going to be the interviewer. I'm the interviewee. So thank you very much, Christy.
Thanks for having me back. So how are you feeling right now?
I'm okay.
You're okay?
Yeah.
I'm really proud of you because I know that this is a vulnerable spot for you to be in. And I'm really, actually, I was a little surprised that you wanted to be interviewed so quickly. I understand why. Maybe you can explain that, why you feel like you want to be interviewed now versus, sometime in the future.
Perfect. I do want to be interviewed in the future also, okay. But I want to be interviewed now because now I have different emotions and feelings and thoughts than I would in 6 months. And I think sometimes we interview someone like you, and yes, in that moment you had some of those thoughts and feelings, but you're also 16 years removed from that experience. And so some of the ways you talk about things would be different. Mm-hmm. And more of a healing aspect. And I think that's good. And I think we should all have healing. For me, I also in the future want to end up being interviewed again at like a year, 2 years, 4 years, however long this goes on. And then I can put those side to side of a question and show the different answers. So you can see progression of an individual who has gone through this traumatic experience of losing a child and where their progression has gone through the years.
That makes sense. That's good. Okay, so I understand that, this is really raw for you. You're still right in the very beginning stages of your grief. And
yes,
so
it's been 5.5 months since Sunni died.
Okay, so I'm going to go through the same question format that you used on me and the other interviews, and then we'll just go through and add a little bit if we feel like we want to talk about anything like that. And if you decide that it's too vulnerable right now and you can't do it, you can just say pass, and we'll skip it. So you don't feel like you're being put on the spot to answer something that you don't want to answer. Okay? Mm-hmm. Just say pass, and I'll be like, okay, got it. We'll move on to the next one. Okay?
I'll commit now. I'm not going to pass.
Okay. So let's just start out with, I know you did a little intro on your podcast, but for those that have not seen that, let's just start out a little bit and tell me about your child. I'll let you name her, and then we'll go on from there.
Yeah.
So what's your child's name?
Her name's Sunni.
Okay.
Sunni, because she was bright and beautiful, or is bright and beautiful. And then her middle name is Jean, which is after both of her grandmas. My mother's middle name is Jean, and my mother-in-law's middle name is Jean. So she has that tie to both of her grandparents. So Sunni Jean. And anyone that met her would say that she was bubbly and bright, and she fit her name perfectly.
She did. I have the fortune of knowing Sunni, and she was just a beautiful, bright little girl that everybody loved. She would draw in her, and she showed love to everyone that she came around, and we love that about her. And I love that you. That's unique that both of her grandmas have that same middle name, and she gets to be tied to them. That's really special. Okay, so tell me maybe a special memory that you have, or a favorite moment that you've had with Sunni that you can remember that you cherish.
I just like doing lots of things with her. She was very active and probably the most adventurous when it comes to like sports and athletics and just physical stuff of all of our kids. And that was just a special place to me because we would go jump on the trampoline. She learned how to do flips at a pretty young age. That was pretty fun and awesome to do. One thing that we did in our family, and I try to continue to do, I didn't do it as well as what I would have hoped when I looked back after her death, is 10 minutes. And 10 minutes is 10-minute individual time with me every day. I tried to do it every day. I didn't do it every day. But the kids would, once I started it, and say, this is your 10-minute time. And I realize some people might be like, 10 minutes isn't very much. Well, it's 10 minutes of no other kids and the one child for 10 minutes, and we do whatever they want to do. And for the most part, she always just wanted to go jump on the trampoline.
Really? That's fun.
So we would go jump on the trampoline for 10 minutes. Yep.
That's cool.
Yep. And just doing cartwheels and handstands, going boating is probably some of my favorite stuff.
She loved to be on the boat. Yeah. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through this, I'm sure. What were some of her, like, I know that she loved like sparkly things, and you have a dress up here on the wall that was her, is that like her favorite dress, or was that her birthday dress?
No, the dress we have on the wall. We bought 2 dresses to bury her in. That's the duplicate of the dress that she's buried in.
Okay.
So it's up on the wall, so we know what she is dressed in right now.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. The irony of what you're saying is she loves sparkles and pink and purple. Purple, probably her favorite color, and pink, her second favorite color, and sparkles and purses and all things girl. It's interesting because Camille's not this girly girl. She's not. She never has been, which is one of the things that was attractive for me of Camille, is she wasn't this girly girl. She was somebody that just wanted to do activities and have fun and things like that. And she was still a girl, but she just wasn't like
high maintenance and needed all this extra.
She didn't like have all these different purses and mocker. Like, it just wasn't a thing. Sunni was all girl. She found one of Camille's sunglasses cases and just wore it around her arm like a purse. It's not anything she learned from us. Before she died, she was super into the high jeans or high-waisted pants. I don't understand where she got this from. By the way, I think it's like not very attractive. But she would just like yank her pants up as high as they would go and like tuck her shirt in. It was a thing. She was super into fashion and super into just all of those things sparkly. So very girly girl. You could tell that she was her individual person.
Now, did you guys feed into that, or was that a little bit hard since, Camille wasn't the frilly girly girl? Or, I mean, did you let her have it? Did you let her like just be as, extravagant as she wanted to be, wear all the sparkles and all the jewelry and all the things that she wanted to do? Or did you have to kind of tame it down a little bit?
I think we just fed into it. I would even like multiple daddy-daughter date type of things or 10-minute type of times. I would paint her toenails and fingernails for her.
Nice.
Just do stuff like that. And she wanted, of course, sparkles or pink and purple and then sparkles on top of it. I think I took her on a daddy-daughter date to go get our nails done one time. And then she freaked out and she didn't want to get her nails done.
Oh, really?
And so we ended up leaving. But that was like part of, it was definitely something that if that's what she wanted.
Made her happy. Yeah, good. I like that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the accident. Can you tell us how she passed away? Do you call it the accident, or do you call it, like, how do you refer to it?
I say the accident.
Okay.
I don't know a better way. Is there a better way that you talked about
No, I don't know. I know that some people call it like,
the worst day of my life.
Yeah, or they say things like
it was the worst day of my life.
They don't say the accident. They'll say, depending on, the circumstances, they can say they'd name it something differently.
Yeah.
You
No, I
know?
get it.
So
Well, the week of the accident happened on a Friday, but the week of the accident, leading up to it, Camille had this huge test that she was supposed to get done. And so part of that, my in-laws and my brother-in-law and sister-in-law said that they would take the kids on a camping trip to Colorado, so that Camille could just study for this test that she was going to be having. So they were gone. And for that entire week, I think I ended up going to the lake 3 or 4 times, just because boats are a big thing in our family, is part of the reason why Camille and I even went on a date in the first place. And they've just been important. I do that for work. And so we had invited this other family to come to go on the boat with us on this Friday. The kids got back on Thursday night pretty late, and it was meet the teacher night for their school that night. So we went to meet the teacher night, and even Camille and I talked like, should we still go to the lake? They're kind of tired. And we both kind of said they should be fine. And we didn't feel any negative thing like, oh, we shouldn't go to the lake. It was just kind of, general parenting and trying to understand how your kid's going to be. It's no fun to be out on the lake with tired, whiny kids. It's just not fun. But so we decided that it would be okay, that we could go. So I woke up in the morning. I already had the boat somewhat ready, started getting everything ready in the morning. Got what I typically do if we leave earlier in the morning like that is I'll try to get everything ready, everything in the boat, food, water, everything that we need, towels, equipment, everything, and then let the kids sleep as long as possible and then wake them up right before and then just put them in the car, give them some food on the way out there type of thing, so that we don't wake them up earlier than needed. We did all of that. Funny story, she scared me that morning. I woke up, or when I was coming upstairs to get some towels, I didn't see her in her room and I didn't see her in the bathroom. And I don't know, she must have heard me or something, but she went and hid in the laundry room and then popped out behind the door and scared me. So that was a fun little moment that we had. And I also, that Thursday night when walking up to go to bed, the thought had come as I got close to her door, like, oh, it'll be fine. I'll just see her in the morning. And I didn't need to go check on her, but I was like, I want to go check on her. So I went into her room and checked on her. She was sprawled out on the end of her bed, and I gave her a little kiss and a hug. And I even talked to Camille about that, of being able to go see her. And she's like, yeah, I saw her too. She was all sprawled out. And so we had a kind of a little laugh between Camille and I of how she sleeps. I realize this is long-winded of That's where I'm going, but I'm trying to give context because that helps with some of the later stuff that happens and some of the questioning stuff that happens of, well, why did we go to the lake, right? So we get everybody in the car, we drive out to the lake, and we wait there, and the family shows up. And in my mind, the family that we had invited, I'd only met a couple times. Camille and our kids had never really met them. And in my mind, I thought they would only have maybe 2 or 3 kids. That's what I thought. But then they started kind of pouring out the van, and there were more of them than on what I had anticipated. Mm-hmm. Even so much so that I started calculating in my head, okay, do I have enough life jackets for these people? Are we actually going to be in compliance with the capacity on the boat? So I started thinking all of these things that, oh, wow, there's more people than I had anticipated coming. And so I verified that everything was okay from a legality standpoint. We weren't over capacity with our boat. I had enough life jackets for everyone and the sizes and everything. Just mentally, I was like, okay, yep, everything checks the box. That's just more people than I had thought was going to be in the boat. And this was in the middle of July, and we went out earlier in the morning, but I think that day it was supposed to be upwards in, the 110, 115 degree weather. And it was even getting toasty then at 8 or 9 in the morning. So we get everybody in the boat, haul the boat down, put it in the water, and we go out towards the no-wake zone. And we get outside the no-wake zone. And because it's so hot, we just have everybody hop in the water real quick and just have a swim break just to keep everybody cool. It's something that's typically we've done every time I go on the boat. I even took a youth group out that same week, did the same thing. I had a ton of people on the boat that time. And even before I started going on that one, I was like, man, I need to make sure everybody's back in the boat. I hadn't taken account on that day, on that Wednesday that I took this youth group out. Everyone was back in the boat though. It was just kind of one of those mental notes again, like, hey, you just need to always make sure that everybody's in the boat, right?
Here's also a reminder to subscribe and follow this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. Now, back to the podcast.
So everybody gets back in the boat when we were with that family. And then everyone was kind of cooled down. We started teaching some people how to wake surf. That's what I love to do. And that's part of why I want to take people out on the boat. I've taken you out on the boat.
Right.
You didn't really know that we were going on the boat. There was some miscommunication there, but that's what I love to do. And I love to share the joy of boating with people. And so I started teaching some of their family members how to wake surf. And in between every single rider, we would again have a swim break for everybody. So then everyone can participate instead of just having to be like, okay, the next rider, and everyone's just sitting in the boat. That's never fun. So everybody would always get in and swim. We would tell everyone, get back in the boat. There were a lot of people in the boat that day, but everyone would always get back in. Also, because I teach a lot of different people, I wanted to buy a new wake surf board. That was for like smaller youth age people, like 12 to 14, weight range in that normal size of what a 12 to 15-year-old would be. So I bought a new wake surf board. And I taught a couple more people how to wake surf. I taught the mom of the family that came out how to wake surf. And that took a long time to do. And finally got her up and got her wake surfing. And so then we said, hey, let's take a quick break now. And I was going to teach their son, but he was in that weight range of this board that I had never actually ridden. And because I'd never ridden it, it's hard to coach on how to, like, where to put your feet.
Right.
Because I just don't know yet, because I needed to know. So we had everyone get out and swim. And I had been filming all of that stuff. So I shut all the cameras off and things because everything was done for the filming that we were trying to do. And I needed to ride the surfboard. So we called to everybody, hey, everybody get back in the boat. It's time to get back in the boat. To my knowledge, at the time, everybody had gotten back in the boat. And so I wanted to ride the surfboard, and I literally just needed to ride it for 5 seconds. As soon as the wave formed on the boat, I could have ridden it, figured out where my feet were, thrown the rope, and been like, okay, here we go.
Let me
the next
show
time.
somebody else how to do it. Yeah.
Now I know exactly what I need to do. I can just teach. It wasn't like I was going to go ride for any amount of time. It was just that short. So I get into the water. Camille is driving the boat for me. And I was even kind of like, hey, like, why are we waiting? Like, let's go. Which I feel bad for and I regret. We thought everybody was in the boat. Camille took off. I started wake surfing. I read the police reports, and everyone said that they heard something or felt something in the boat, that like a thud. I didn't know any of that because I was in the water.
Right.
And right a little bit after I had gotten up, I heard a scream. And I looked back, and it was Sunni screaming for me. No one else in the boat heard the scream because of the engine. And she was in the water. And my first thought is, why is she in the water? And how did we leave her?
That was so confusing, yeah.
And I don't know if you ever do this, but anytime any of my kids will like fall on a bike or trip or in some sense get kind of hurt, I always, even if other parents are around and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm always like, hey, my kid's fine. Like, they're fine. Everything's fine. And I've done that for almost their entire lives. Just like, I'll run to them. They'll be fine. Everything will be okay. Like, you know, and so I had that kind of mentality of, she's okay. Everything's going to be fine.
You couldn't tell how serious it was at that moment.
No, like I heard her screaming and I was like, in my mind is like, I was thinking she's just scared that she's still
Hey,
in
I'm
the
still
water.
in the water. Yeah.
She's scared that we left without her. She's scared that I'm not there. And so I was thinking it's just no big deal. It's no big deal. She's in the water. We'll just go and grab her, put her in the boat, and we'll just keep on having this wonderful day that we're having.
Right.
And Camille kind of looks at me, and I drop the rope, and then she is like, what's going on? So she goes to drive back, and I start swimming back to Sunny. I left the surfboard there and just started swimming back to Sunny, and she is still kind of screaming for me. Again, I'm not in some huge rush to get to her because I have that thought that it's no big deal. It's okay. Everything's okay. Similar to like a child wrecking on a bike. They're okay. Everything's going to be okay. And the closer I got, I could tell it was not okay. And the first time that I knew that this was big is Camille got close enough to the boat, and she had a different vantage point. And from my knowledge, she could have seen all the blood that was in the water. Because what had happened, well, I'll just keep going with what the story is, and we can try to figure out what happened after. Camille then like screamed to me, "Oh, Blake, my baby," and then dove into the water from the boat. The boat was, if any boat is still drifting, whether it has power or not, if you were just going somewhere and then you put the boat in neutral, it's still going to drift because you didn't ever stop the boat. It's not like a brake. So I had multiple concerns at the same time. There was also other boats that had kind of like heard the commotion and had kind of driven closer over by where we were. So in the midst of all this, I still have like, hey, the boat,
It's still
something about the
going,
boat. So I was yelling to the people in the boat, like hit the stop button, turn it off, do whatever, because I just didn't know what Camille had done, if she had turned it off or anything, but I could tell the boat was drifting. I didn't want to just continually drive away because I knew that if there was any chance, then we would have to get her in the boat as quick as we could and like use that as a tool to help us, right, with her. So I'm trying to tell the people what to do with the boat while I'm still swimming really hard. And as I got close to her, Camille says something to the effect like, "Blake, her arm, Blake, her arm." And she lifts her up a little bit out of the water to show me her arm, and she's screaming at me. And at that time, where I was at in the water, I could feel, it's a term called the viscosity of water. It's how the water actually feels, how thick it is. And it got way thicker. And it was because I was swimming through blood. Mm-hmm. And so I got to Sunny, and then I told Camille, "Go get the boat." And so she started swimming to the boat. I don't even know how she got to the boat. I don't know any of that. But she ended up getting to the boat. And just like you pick up any child from like the back and their legs, I picked her up. With my life jacket on, I picked her up. She had a life jacket on, everything. I picked her up. And as I picked her up, I could tell that we were in a really, really bad spot. Mm-hmm. And so I swam with her kind of on my chest and got her to the boat and begged that we could say a quick prayer right there. And as soon as I got her to the back of the boat, I knew she was dead.
I'm sure that was a horrible experience, and I'm really sorry that your family had to experience that.
And I didn't even know what to do. So we tried to call 911. I was just holding her. And then the thought came to me that Camille needs to hold her. Because I want her to hold her. Even though we both knew that she was gone. And so I said, Camille, come here. And then I had Camille sit down and I just handed Sunny to Camille. We were trying to call 911. No one was answering. One of the other boats there, we said, go up the lake and try to contact 911. And we just sat there. I sat there and I just looked at Camille. I looked at the father of the family that was there with us, and he was just holding Camille, holding our baby. Just in total shock. It's just, I was almost kind of like walking around the boat, like, what do you do? And I was just like looking at people, and everyone's just no words, nothing to say. Everyone is just like jaw dropped. Just, what do you do? So I started driving back. I was finally like, well, we got to get back no matter what. So I started driving back. Finally, someone in our boat was able to get connected to 911. They were asking him where they are in the lake. And instead of them trying to communicate where we are in the lake, they didn't know where it was. So I just wanted to take someone out of the equation. So I just grabbed the phone and started talking to them. And I just repeatedly kept saying, she's dead. There's nothing. And they're like, no, where are you at? We need to send people. And I just kept saying, they're dead. She's dead. Like there's no point to send anyone. So
there was no like helicopter or anything that came
Not
or
at that
anything
point.
like that?
No. And then multiple other boats came up to our boat while we were driving to try to tell us where we should go or not. But I was already talking to 911. So I was just going to go where I had told them I was going to go. Camille had tried to do CPR a little bit on Sunny, but we both knew that she was dead. And finally, the 911 person gave up trying to like convince me that I needed to tell them where we were so they could send people. And they just finally said, okay, just drive to where you're going to go then. And we pull up and they had paramedics already. The fire department was there. They jumped on the boat. They grabbed her and put her on the dock. I even like slowed down in the no wake zone. And I was like, why am I even slowing down? I know the legality, but like I got to get her there. So I just hammered it over to where we were. They came on and got her and put her on the dock. I was trying to like make sure everything was fine with the boat. I was trying to make sure everything's fine with the kids. The kids got rushed into a different room at the marina. So did Camille. And I didn't have shoes on. And I couldn't find my shoes. And it was burning hot.
And the ground is on fire hot. Yeah.
And so I'm like walking around trying to stick my feet into the water. But then I'm trying to go like be next to Camille and help Camille. And then the paramedic said something about like a pulse or a false pulse or I got a pulse or something. And so I'm like, wait, there's a possibility that like there could a miracle could happen. So I started asking them questions and they wouldn't say anything to me. I assume that that's how they're trained to.
Right.
But they wouldn't say anything to me. And so I'm watching them work on her, trying to find my shoes or my phone or anything. And then I have the police down there with us trying to talk to us. Camille felt the need to start calling some different people. I was there when she called my family. And she's somewhat hysterical, but still trying to communicate that Sunny's dead or that there was this huge boating accident, and people don't get it on the phone.
Right.
They almost think it's a prank when you call them.
Or they're like, what
happened?
Yeah,
What?
Yeah,
and so I grabbed the phone from her and I said, there's a boating accident. She got hit. She's dead. And then in order to get to the hospital, they told Camille that she couldn't be in the ambulance, which I didn't understand. At the time, I didn't know that she got told that. I would have preferred that she had been with Sunny the entire time. And I probably would have fought for that had I known that she got told that.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to get our way to the hospital, and we had to go unhook the trailer, and the boat was going to be impounded and all these different things. I'm thankful to all the paramedics, the firefighters, the people at the marina. I put them in a very bad spot, but they did things they needed to help my family, which was nice. And then we got to the hospital, and another call that they made on the way to the hospital was to the person in our church, or leader in our church, was actually his wife. I don't know if this phone was on speakerphone, but I remember her verbatim response is, "This is a joke. You must be joking."
Mm-hmm.
Get to the hospital, and they tell us she's dead. You can see her. The doctor came in and said, based off of all of her injuries, there was zero chance that anything could have been done to save her. So to go back on what actually happened, we don't really know what happened. And I know everyone's curious of what happened. I'm curious as to what happened.
Mm-hmm.
We thought everybody had gotten back in the boat when everybody got back in the boat. And even I believe that Sunny did get back in the boat when we asked everyone to get back in the boat. I don't know if people were still playing tag like the kids or something, or she thought she would be funny, or I don't know exactly what happened. But before we ever took off on the boat, she got back in the water, I think happened. The other scenario is she never got back in and she just stayed by the front of the boat. You can't blame anyone individual for that. There were multiple adults all on that boat, multiple people. It was my boat. Camille was there with us. We all should have checked, no matter how many things we have in place, and thinking that everyone was there. She just wasn't. So when we took off, she must have been in the perfect spot that she needed to be, and the boat proceeded to go over her, and she got hit by the propeller. So that's the explanation of what happened, even though we don't really know what happened. So we're there with Sunny in the hospital, and they have her pretty much covered up for the majority of her body with a sheet. And they bring in like a pastor or
the hospital chaplain.
Chaplain. Yeah. Thank you. That's the right word. A chaplain. And she says, let's say a prayer. And I said, no, it's my daughter. I would like to say the prayer. And so we knelt down next to Sunny. And in general Christianity, most religions, the way that you pray is you call upon God and then you say things you're thankful for. And typically people say, I'm thankful for this day. That's just the kind of rote repetition.
Giving gratitude for the life that they have today.
Yep.
Yeah.
And holding Sunny's lifeless hand, kneeling down with Camille next to me, I said, my dear Heavenly Father. And then in my mind, I thought the next words needed to be, I'm thankful for this day.
But you couldn't say it.
And I just went silent. I couldn't say anything. The chaplain ended up helping and saying a prayer, and I just sat there in shock. I don't think I could ever say that I'm thankful for that day.
Mm-hmm.
And they separated us because they had to interrogate Camille and I to know if we had
Done
done
anything.
anything, if there were drugs or alcohol or anything, or if there was a domestic fight that had taken place or something that had been done that we intentionally harmed our child. And then I had people show up to the hospital that didn't know that she was dead yet.
Mm.
They come into the hospital room that I'm in by myself. I'm already in just this awful place anyways. I don't even have Camille with me. And they just keep saying, where is she? Where is she? Because in their mind, they wanted to know what room in the hospital she's in. They wanted to be able to go see her. And I was trying to explain. They said that we can't see her anymore. Excuse me. These are my in-laws. They're there. And finally it clicked in my head. Oh, they don't know she's dead.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to be the one to tell them. I can tell right now you don't know that she's dead. She's dead. And then they just, about 2 or 5 minutes later, my brother-in-law shows up, same thing. Now his parents are just sitting in benches and stuff, and they're trying to understand what the heck's going on in their life. And the fact that their granddaughter's dead, he comes in, where is she? Where is she? And instead of going through that whole thing of explaining stuff, I just said, I can tell you don't know that she's dead either. She's dead. And I had to tell him.
I'm assuming that was Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm.
And so just seeing, one, I had to be the bearer of bad news. I'm already in this awful state. And then I have to be the one that lets them know,
Right.
and then watch their whole reaction of essentially all of them just fall on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
You can just see it. You say the words and their whole person just,
Yeah.
the weight
Collapses.
just drops.
Yeah.
And then just seeing people at the hospital. You came to the hospital. Other people were at the hospital.
How long were you guys in the hospital before they told you that you had to? They give you, after the interrogations and, you know, all of that happened, did they bring you and Camille back together, and then were you able to spend time with Sunni?
I don't understand all of the things from a legality standpoint and from the police department and what they have been instructed to do in situations like that. They didn't give us a whole lot of time. And I begged and pleaded that we could have a little bit more time. And they did grant us that opportunity. I had been told multiple times if it was a different officer that we had, that wouldn't have even been a possibility.
Wow.
I don't understand the legality, and people will probably ask questions and be like, oh, that's so this or that.
They have,
There's
there's policies in place.
There's stuff that
for them.
happens.
Yeah.
Right. And so they have things in place because people do bad things to
Right.
kids. Right.
Right.
So no, we got to see her for a very short amount of time. And then we got to see her again for just another very short amount of time. And other than that, Camille was interrogated, had to be drug tested, and I was interrogated. And Camille and I were separated for
Most of that time.
like an hour
Wow.
or close to an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I came to the hospital, and there was a lot of people there that were there that had found out, friends, you know, that wanted to be there to support you. And I knew you were going to come out soon. And I just remember telling everybody, we have to leave. Like, we cannot have all this crowd standing here when they come out. It's an awful feeling. And I was so worried that it was going to be too overwhelming. And thankfully everybody agreed. They understood and they agreed. And so when you came out, I think there was maybe 4 or 5 of us that were left there that were there to support you. How did you feel about that? Was that difficult, or did you not have any feelings about it? Was it too overwhelming? Were you thankful that happened, or what was your experience in that?
I didn't have any expectations, and I didn't know what it was going to be like. And so everyone was like, well, we got to go home now.
Yeah.
And so I walked out. And I saw one of my really good friends that I had grown a relationship over the past year and a half with.
Mm-hmm.
I still feel it right now. But he just came up and hugged me. And I just lost it.
Yeah.
I thought that they were out of town and weren't even here. So I was very surprised when they were there. And that meant a lot to me.
Yeah, that's good. I was worried that it would be you just never know. It could go both ways. It could be very traumatic for someone to have all that those people there, or it could be a source of comfort. But oftentimes I think that it's interesting that what you said earlier about going through the wake zone, like speeding through the wake zone because you knew you were in the wake zone. I just think that when you said that made just such a, I remember when Ben's accident, I was running down the street and there was people that had come out and I knew these people. And in my mind, I was thinking, should I say hi to them? But that seems so dumb that I'm trying to figure out, because we do things like that's our normal, it just seems like we're supposed to still be friendly. Yeah. And then I had to have this conversation with myself. I don't have to say hi to them right now, but so when you're in that moment in the wake zone where you're like, oh, these are the rules I'm supposed to follow. And then you have to put those rules aside and do what you need to do to get through that moment. I just think our brain goes in all these different directions, and we're thinking of so many different things.
I've never really thought of that before. If you're in the middle of an emergency, what laws do you follow the laws?
Right.
Do you not follow the laws? What do you do?
Your brain just goes all over these different places on the things that have to happen, to get through that moment. And so it can be a little overwhelming, for sure, to try to figure it all out. And, and I think you just have to go with whatever, the direction that you need to go in to make it better in that moment. So, yeah. So, and then leaving the hospital, how do you leave the hospital?
Everybody told me I couldn't drive. And I was like, why can I not drive? Everyone kept trying to tell me what to do, which was really annoying to me. Mm-hmm. But at the time, that's not a hill I was going to die on.
Yeah.
I didn't care that much to start arguing with people if I can drive my own truck home or not. Okay, I'll have somebody drive me. That's fine.
Yeah. But you felt like you could in that moment?
Oh, I could have. Yeah. I was annoyed that people were trying to tell me what to do. And even I think you had told me at one point, not at that hospital, but at someone else, you had said something to the effect of, there's lots of people that are going to try to tell you what to do, and just have grace with everyone. Everyone's trying to help.
Yeah.
And understand that if you don't want to do something or you do want to do something, you're okay to do that.
Yeah.
And again, it wasn't a hill I was going to die on. It was just weird. And now there's all these people are here. Now, there wasn't tons of people, and I appreciate that there weren't tons of people. I think Camille totally would have been overwhelmed with all the people that were there. Mm-hmm. I think the amount of people that were there when we came out of the hospital were perfect.
Good. So can we back up just a second? So when I was also very protective in that moment with you, one of the first things that came to my mind is that I wanted to protect Camille because I had heard that she was driving the boat. And can we talk about that for just a minute? I did not want that. I did not feel like that was anybody's business. And so I told the people at the hospital, please don't share this with anyone. We need to protect Camille. And so, but then we found out that it was in the media. And I just thought that was such a cruel thing. And did it have any bearing on the story? Did it have any bearing on the outcome of Sunni and how much pain that contributed? It just like piled on more pain to you.
Hey, Lost Child podcast family, I have something special for you right now. Following the death of Sunni, I had a book that was gifted to me. This book right here, Like a River. I think this book is an incredible book. It's an incredible read for somebody that's going through grief or loss, specifically about losing a child. Granger Smith goes into great detail about his experience losing their son, River. Now, I have set up an affiliate link down in the video description or podcast description. By purchasing this book through the link we give you, the Lost Child podcast will receive a small commission, which will help support the podcast to help more people with hope and healing through their grief journeys. Thank you for your support of the Lost Child podcast. Now, back to the podcast.
Did you feel like that was something, and of course, people come out of the woodwork and say mean things when you are online and you had an online presence. And so I just hope for people that are listening that when something like this happens, the details don't always matter. Those small details. And sometimes they need to be kept on the down low to protect the people that are involved. And not protect them in any kind of legal or liability way, but just protect their heart, protect, from causing more pain to an already just tragic situation. Can you share just a little bit about that and how you guys have dealt with that? Or
that one seemed more like a Camille question instead of me putting like my thoughts on that. Mm-hmm. I'll put some on it, but I won't speak for her or what she thinks. I also, from like a male stance, take a decent amount of responsibility, and from a boat standpoint, take a decent amount of responsibility. I don't know if I can convey this in the way that I would like to convey it. And this kind of goes into some of the grief cycle stuff of like the bargaining stage of the what could have been different. Well, the only reason why we had a boat was because of me, right? The only reason why we had the boat that we had was because of a job that I had, was because I wanted to do this whole YouTube thing, and because I wanted to make boating such an integral part of our life. It had been an integral part of my life. So all of this would have never happened had I have done something different on all of those occasions, right? And then as a boat owner, a boat enthusiast, some may even consider me to be not a specialist, but I don't know, somebody that knows a lot about boats.
That would be an expert.
Expert. There you go. I don't know why
you don't want to say the word.
No, I couldn't figure out the freaking word. I tried to explain this in another video. As a captain or a boat owner, I never really ever relinquish that captain authority to somebody else. Yes, someone else could have been driving the boat. It could have been many different people that were driving the boat. But I still feel that responsibility of safety of all the people that were on the boat. I still feel that responsibility of making sure the boat is in the right spot where it needs to be. That if there's other boats that are on the lake, I need to help direct the person that's driving. That this needs to go here. You need to do this, right? The senior authority, the senior knowledge would have all landed on me. I would say I feel the same sentiment that you do of we need to protect her. I wish it was somebody else. I wish it was me that was driving, right? One thing that I know for sure that happened right away, right when I got Sunni to the back of the boat, is all I had was empathy and compassion
and love for Camille.
Wow. I love that about you. And I've seen this, the way that you've tried to protect her through this whole experience and be the buffer that she's needed between people that want to reach out to her. And, you know when she can handle it and when she couldn't handle it. And you were that buffer, protecting her in that. And I've admired that through this process with you. Now, you did say something to me. I remember saying to you that Blake, that no one, anyone that knew you and had ever been on the boat with you, knew that you and Camille took safety to the top level. That you knew what you were doing and you were always safe. And you made the comment to me that made it all even worse. And I never thought about that point of view before you said that to me, because I was just thinking in my mind that everybody knows that they're so safe. Everyone knows they're super safe. They follow all the rules. They do head counts. They do everything that needs to be done. This was just one of those fluke accidents that you can't, pinpoint what happened. But I never thought about the way that made you feel, knowing that, everybody, that we knew that about you, that you knew that about you. You're safe on the boat. But you said it made it so much more worse. Can you talk about that a little bit? Did you feel like in that moment that looking back on it, you still were doing safety protocols, but do you feel like you failed in some way?
Yeah.
Is that where you're saying that?
No,
that
I failed because she died.
Failure.
Had I not failed, she would still be alive.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's hard because I can see it from an outsider perspective that would be like, you're just not safe. You're an idiot. If you weren't such an idiot, she would still be alive. I can see it from an outsider perspective, right? I can even see it.
But no outsider thinks that.
Maybe. I can also see it from like all of my neighbors that see that I had this boat and I have this boat all this time and invite people out and do all these things and try to explain it so safe. And then they're like, well, he got what was coming or whatever, of it's not that safe. So I can see people, how they could do that. I've not seen people say that. And you talked about some of the hate that happened online. Any of the Facebook groups or any of the Facebook stuff, honestly, I took a sabbatical, a rest from
You needed to.
social media for 2 or 3 weeks. So I don't know what people actually said about us or Camille or me or anything. I just know the stuff that, came through on my own social media platforms on YouTube.
That's where I was referring to. I didn't think that anybody said anything mean on any of the Facebook groups or as the story was being shared. I didn't see anything, but I had heard that there were some people that had made some comments on your YouTube channel that were not nice and that were difficult.
Yeah.
When you said that people think that, this may have been what was coming to him or whatever, this is what because you had this boat and you did all that kind of stuff. You talked before in an episode with me that our thoughts come from 3 different places, right? That our thoughts come from the Spirit, from Heavenly Father, through Satan, or through ourselves. And I think that is a thought right there that comes from Satan for sure. Because anyone that knows you and loves your family, they wouldn't think that. And I think that is Satan's way of trying to keep you from focusing on the healing power that comes and the spirit that comes from Heavenly Father's Spirit and the comfort and the peace that can come. I think that is completely the adversary trying to destroy your peace. And I hope that that's not a thought that you dwell on, that you spend a lot of time thinking about.
It's not something I constantly think about, but it's definitely something that's been there or still is
Creeps
there
up.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And I never want to make a comparison of
mine is worse than yours. You know, you went through similar stuff. And there's people that have worse stuff than me. One thing that makes this very not so great for me is that it was on a boat. It's not like I went
Right.
on a UTV and then had an accident happen. My whole world is boat stuff, everything.
Makes it more painful.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I agree with that. I think there's something in there, though, that as time goes on, you're going to think about that a little bit more, and there's going to be some enlightenment that comes out of that.
See, and I'm not sure. And the reason why I say is even driving Sunny back to the dock, Camille's just screaming, I can never be on a boat again.
Mm-hmm.
I can never be on a boat again. And driving to the hospital, Blake, I can never go on a boat again. So I don't know.
Well, and that may be the case. You may not ever be able to be on a boat again, or Camille may not be on a boat. But I still think there's something in there to learn about your love of boating and having this happen in that way. And that will just take time for you to work through and come to terms with. But I do think that there's something there for learning that is hopeful.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. Probably not to you right now.
I'll be honest, it doesn't make sense to me right now.
Yeah, I'm sure it doesn't. So let's talk about how did your family cope with the immediate loss of it? Because it was a tragedy, and so what kind of support systems did you have in place? What did you find helpful in that moment in the trauma of it? Because the grief is a different thing, I think, than the moment of the trauma or the immediate aftermath of the trauma.
Well, we called people and told them stuff that had happened. I had a sister that was in the middle of like going to like a family vacation, or she was going somewhere with her family, but instead just drove straight to the airport, got on an airplane, flew down here. Had a brother-in-law. He was somewhere, but he ended up flying in or coming in. So we had multiple people come and just like sleep on our floor.
Mm-hmm.
Was
that helpful to you?
I think it was nice because we couldn't sleep. You can't sleep.
Right.
And if you did, you slept for like an hour, and then I'd get woken up from Camille just uncontrollably sobbing and trying to console her. And then I would wake her up from doing the exact same thing. There was one night that was super helpful. I think I woke up at 1 or 2 in the morning, came down and just asked my sister, do you want to go on a walk? So we went on a walk at 2 in the morning. Mm-hmm. Just because I couldn't sleep.
Yeah. I think that having the people around kind of creates a little bit of a distraction to get you through to the next moment. And so you can kind of just grasp your head around what has just happened.
Even like the funeral, like, we had kind of a big dinner and people came over to my in-laws' house. I think I made the comment to Camille, this is similar to what a wedding would be like. Just the
bringing
atmosphere.
Everyone together. Yeah.
If we didn't know anything different, it would have been just like a wedding.
Was that painful to you?
No, I think it was just an observation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's kind of, when people get together, people, you'll hear people talking and it kind of, you can look back and go like, wow, but people do laugh at funerals and people do, share experiences. And, when you have a bunch of people together, there is going to be laughter and joy and stuff like that. And so I would just wondered if that was hard for you or if you felt like it was useful or
I think it was
helpful
good.
or something like that.
I thought it was
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Good.
I think it's good to laugh, and I think it's good to smile. And it's interesting that you can smile and you can laugh even in a
Tragic
situation
moments.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did, what kind of, so you had this family here that was helpful. Did you guys seek out any type of therapies right away? Or how did you turn to a grief therapist, or what was the immediate, what did you do to immediately help with coming to terms with what had just happened?
One of Camille's cousins has a guy that is down in Tucson, and he runs like some therapy and addiction recovery and other different institute where they have counselors and different ties and stuff. So he said, hey, I'm going to get you connected with some of the best people that can help you. I said, okay. And so they kind of went around trying to find the best grief counselor for us. In the meantime, we were able to talk with just one of the counselors that he had there. We talked to her on the phone. We did have somebody come over. It was really hard to sleep.
Yeah.
It was really hard to do anything in those moments. It's hard to know what to do as a couple also. And so that was very difficult for me. And I'm thinking that more from like a couple standpoint and like the grief counselor and stuff. For me, things that I did, I think people might think are crazy. For me, I wanted to go pick up the boat, and I wanted to go clean the boat.
Yeah, I remember that actually.
And people kept telling me not to do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, stop telling me what to do. This is something that I wanted to do for me. A couple things is I wanted to see if I could be back on a boat again. And then the worst boat to ever be back on
was the boat.
Was that boat.
Yeah.
Right? And not only that, go clean it. The cops and the police hadn't cleaned it. I didn't expect them to. And so with a couple of my buddies, and my dad also wanted to go, we went and picked up the boat, and then we went and cleaned the boat. And so I had been back on that exact boat.
Was that helpful for you? Do you feel like that was a helpful
I think it was helpful to show that I could do it on the, like, can you get back up on the horse again type of thing. That's just my perspective and like what I wanted to do and see. I also felt a large amount of responsibility for it. And so I wanted to take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that. And then I also would go on walks or bike rides to just process what was going on. And I'd listen to music that I have saved, that Sunni really liked and was very meaningful to me. And I would just ride my bike and cry the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah. That, as sad as that sounds, it's good. You know, it's good to cry like that. And I did the same thing. I had a playlist that I played all the time, and I would just sit and cry and cry and cry. And you think you're never going to stop crying, but it's helpful during those moments. So did you get therapy? Okay, so first let's say you've got two boys still. You have Tucker and Dieter. And how old is Tucker?
Tucker is 10 now.
And Dieter is?
He's 4.
4. How are you seeing that you guys are grieving in different ways?
All of us are grieving in different
ways, right? Is it, how are you doing with that?
Me?
Are you finding it difficult to help Camille or Tucker or Dieter in their grief when that's not your style of grief? Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. No, that's not difficult.
Good.
The difficult nature comes when, as a father figure and a husband figure, and trying to be a leader and a supporter, it's difficult to know how to help Camille fully and how to help the boys fully, and then also have time for myself to grieve and process and understand and know and weigh all those things and understand that there are some times that I need to say, sorry, I can't help with X, Y, and Z, and I need to go do this for me. It's similar to the airplane thing of get the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can help others. But I felt very much that I was just trying to get everyone else's oxygen mask on for a long time and trying to be there for them and help do stuff. And just make sure that everything continues to run in the family when something like this happens. So that's the difficult thing for me, is trying to balance all of those.
Yeah. How are you, has communication been difficult with Camille in your different types of grieving, or difficult with the boys? Do you feel like you and Camille, like, how's it impacted your marriage so far? I mean, you're only, what, 5 months? 5 months. So it's still very new, very raw. What are you finding difficult about that?
Well, to give context, 2 weeks before the accident or 3 weeks before the accident, we were having a dinner at my in-laws' house. And at that time, I told them all that I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. I'm the happiest with my marriage. Happiest I've ever been as a father, of what I'm doing as like employment. Things were going well with some of my personal business ventures and also the work that I was already doing for the company I was doing. I was really happy with how everything was going. It just seemed like everything was good. I felt at peace with God, with the things I was doing. I felt very good about everything. So as opposed to others that we've interviewed that said, you know, my marriage was maybe already kind of like rocky and then this happened or whatever, I felt that we were
really in a good spot.
Really good. And from a communication standpoint with Camille, I still feel like we communicate fairly good. The difficult nature of it is understanding what we can and can't communicate about. Some people would say over communication is better. There's some things that I know that Camille just doesn't want to talk about currently. And
Which
I
can
have to be
change
okay.
later.
And I have to be okay with that.
Which can be frustrating sometimes, or painful, or you know, whatever emotion you want. But knowing that that could change kind of gives you hope. I think that maybe you can revisit some of that stuff later when she's ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think also from a father figure and a husband figure is seeing the pain
that you can't take away. Yeah.
Seeing the pain that Camille has. And as a protector, you want to do anything to protect that. And you can't. And then the boys, same thing. Seeing the amount of pain that they have and some of the different ways that they deal with that.
How are you seeing some of that manifest in them? Because it's different for kids than it is for adults.
Yeah.
And how much do you say, oh, that's just because they're grieving? And then how do you...
It becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
And some of that, I think, is just general parenting anyways, because sometimes you're like, okay, how much of that is them just being 15 and being in a 15-year-old mind?
Or too tired, or they're hungry, or you know, whatever. Yeah.
You know, it's always a debate.
Yeah.
And it's always in trying to understand, right? So that becomes difficult. For both of them, they communicate it in the sense they'll actually like say words of, I'm really sad right now because Sunny's not here. Or this would be way more fun if Sunny was here. Or I really miss her. Or I'm just having a really hard time because Sunny's not here.
I think that says a lot about you and Camille, though, that your kids can say that openly and express those feelings, that you've given them that space to do that, and not, you know, and maybe they're just because they're a little bit younger, they don't have the worry of making you feel sad by saying that they're sad. Yeah. You know, I don't know, maybe they do. I don't know, but that says a lot about you guys, that you're letting them communicate that to you, you know, in a really positive way, healthy way. That's good. They're sweet boys. I love Dieter. He's my McDonald's date.
He is.
He likes to go to McDonald's. He'll call me sometimes. Can you take me to McDonald's? Okay, so as we talked about the stages of grief, the different cycles of grief, how are you finding your way through that? Have you experienced all of those different stages? Do you feel like, and because you're so soon, you're not going to have experienced all of them yet?
I think at different times I have experienced all
Have you?
of them. Yeah.
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 And how are you navigating through that? Are you feeling like,
So some of them we can go through, like the bargaining stage
Yeah.
we talked about is the what if I would have done different, right? So what if I would have never been doing YouTube? What if I would have just essentially outlawed boats? They're too expensive. I just don't want to be them in our family. It's just too much. What if I would have done that? What if I would have just had a normal job at like Amazon or any of the
anywhere?
aero engineering places down here? I could have done anything different and it would have changed the outcome. What if we would have said, hey, our kids are too tired, let's maybe reschedule, and we wouldn't have actually gone to the lake that day? What if I would have asked Sunni if she wanted to come out on the surfboard with me? That would have changed it. What if I would have done so many different things? What if I would have not actually ever bought that surfboard? That's the worst $400 I ever spent, or however much it was. What if I just would have said, no, I don't need to actually test it. I'll still just teach you how to do it.
There's a million what ifs.
There's so many what ifs that I could have done.
Yeah.
Right? You have the anger.
Have you been angry with God?
Oh,
Or are
yeah.
you angry
No.
more at yourself?
Angry at myself a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Angry a lot with God. Because we didn't have like some impression that was like, hey, go check
Yeah.
the front of the boat, or don't drive yet.
And
or don't do any of this.
you would have,
I hope I would have.
yeah.
And so similar to what we said before of you talking about how safe I am with a boat, that you didn't see it making it actually worse. I think sometimes if you have so much faith that God can move mountains, can heal people, can raise them from the dead, any of the stories in the Bible, I think it makes it worse when the miracle doesn't happen to you.
Yeah.
Because you believe it and you see others.
And why can't I have that miracle?
There was a miracle that somebody shared in a talk a couple years back about this guy that his family was getting ready to eat dinner, and he had the idea, I have to go change this light bulb that I haven't changed for like 6 months, but I need to go change it right now. And his wife said, hey, dinner's ready. We got to eat. And he said, no, I need to go change this light bulb. She's kind of like, what? So he ran out of the house to go to the store to grab this light bulb. And as he's going across this park, this child either falls or rides their bike or something into this pond and was drowning. He
And no
jumped
one was
in,
around to see
and no one
him.
was around
Yeah.
to see it. And he was able to jump in and save this child
Yeah.
because he had that thought, I need to go get this light bulb. So you hear stories like that, and you're like,
So
wow,
you wanted
that
the
is
chance.
a miracle.
You wanted the chance to have that impression.
That is a
Yeah.
miracle in faith promoting and building and amazing. God is so ingrained into these little moments in our lives, and he cares so much that he's not going to let this little girl die of drowning because he sent this random stranger across the park to find this girl and then save her and then
Right.
return her back to her parents.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That didn't happen.
I want that miracle. I want that chance to have that kind of miracle happen. And, yeah, I can see how that could cause anger.
It's something that currently I'm still kind of working through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything? What else? Anything else?
What are some of the other ones that are on there?
Depression, acceptance, denial.
Denial we've talked about in our cases of like, how could this be our
Yeah.
life? There's still times that I wake up and it's like, oh wait, she's not here.
And
how
when
is
you-
this our real life?
When you wake
How
up
is
in
this
that
life?
moment, does your heart like stop? Does your chest squeeze? Do you Like, what is it? Take your breath away? Or do you just have this simple thought that, oh,
It's kind of like that.
defeat? Like, yeah.
Like this is our reality.
Yeah. And then what about
on
the depression?
It's always been hard to relate to somebody that has had depression previously. Because yes, I've had sad days before the accident and stuff. And it was never anything I could really understand or relate to. Now, would I say that I'm like clinically depressed or have been diagnosed as depressed? No. Do I have some symptoms that would be similar to what depression would be like? Yes.
What do they call it? Like situational depression or something like that?
Sure.
Yeah.
We can call it that. I don't want to, I'm not a medical board and
Right.
I'm not certified that this or whatever, right? So, but just dealing with general stuff that is dealing with depression. There's some days it's just really hard to do anything.
Yeah.
It's just hard because I'm in this spot that's not a super happy spot, not a super fun spot.
And then still having to go on and function and still provide for your family and do all the things that you're required to do. So can you share some moments or experiences that correspond with any of those, the different stages of grief that we just talked about, to give people an example of what we're talking about here?
Yeah. I went back out to the lake by myself one day, and I went back to the exact spot that the accident happened. And from an anger standpoint, I just kind of like sat there and yelled at God.
And that was probably something that you had to do on your own. You had to be alone in that moment to go back on the water. Now, tell me about the boat. Do you have a different boat, or is it the same boat?
No, we have a different boat.
You have a different boat now?
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So you went out to the lake, you yelled at God. Did you feel like that helped you at least get out what you're feeling, or
to be
still
truthful,
carry
I
some
think
of
it's
that?
like semi a little bit ashamed at the same time. That's
Really?
ashamed that I would even be mad at God.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's all of that plays into it.
Which then creates more,
Yeah, there's definitely cognitive dissonance in there of like, okay, I know that God loves me and I know that God made everything perfect, but like he did this to me and I'm super mad about it. And I'm mad at you, God, but I shouldn't be mad at God because
I know there's a promise later that I'm going to,
And so he's already suffered for all of the pain, afflictions, everything that all of us have in this world. He's already overcome death, all these things that I know, but yet this is how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of me wants to be mad and wants to be justified in my anger at God. And part of me is questioning, why would you even be mad at God? So that's what I was thinking, like in that moment.
But the beautiful thing about the atonement is it even covers the anger and the guilt that you feel for being angry at God.
Yeah.
You know? So you're allowed to feel those things.
But in a weird way, I always never want to do more to add to Christ's suffering than what I could. So I realized the words you used, the example that somebody has given me before was God suffered or Christ suffered so I can sin, instead of Christ suffered because I sin.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which changes things a little bit.
Yeah.
If you think about it that way. Okay. So in these, with the grief, the different types of grief and the way that we travel through our grief, I know, and I shared with you that I had a moment of where I couldn't think logically and that I wanted to harm myself. And I've heard this through other people as well that have gone through this experience, that they've had this time of, they didn't think they could do it anymore. They just needed the pain to stop. And there was no way to get it to stop unless they decided that they were going to do something about it and take their own life or whatever. Have you had an experience like that? Do you feel like you got close to that, or has that not something that you've experienced yet? Hopefully you won't, but
I've had multiple experiences that are like
you've
that.
had multiple.
Yeah.
Can you share any of those?
So one of them was when I had gone back out to the lake by myself. And was had that like angry conversation with God. The thought came to my mind of, well, you could end this really quick and you could do it and make it look like an accident or make it look like whatever. You know enough about how a boat operates and you know where we are and you know all of the things. And I could actually formulate a plan to take away all the pain. And then another time, and the thought came, how quickly could you make this end right now?
Mm-hmm.
I could have done something so quick that nobody would have been able to make it so that I didn't die. And the grief counselor that we had talked with multiple times, she said, you'll probably have these thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
It's not bad to have these thoughts. She said, when you start formulating a plan or you have some way you're going to do that, that's a problem. And that's when you need to see somebody.
You need some help. Yeah.
And people, Camille included, had been saying things like, you need to go see somebody. Excuse me. And I had not divulged this to like anyone. You're the fourth person in my whole life that I've actually said any of that to. And I didn't give you as much detail because I didn't want to give
Camille more detail.
No, all the viewers, everyone, as much detail. So for a while, people had been pressuring me, you need to see somebody, you need to go see a counselor. I'm not ready to see a counselor. And besides, I'm trying to take care of everybody else. Because everyone's doing so many different counselor stuffs and doing different therapies and all these different things. And people are doing school and work. Like I'm just trying to help make sure everything's moving. Until I was talking to one of my friends, a very close friend of mine. And I was like, I think I need to see somebody. And this is why. And I gave him what I think is like very specific details of what went on. And he's like, yeah, you need to go see somebody. So I took that time and he helped me come up with somebody that he got recommended to him that I should go see. So I have seen a therapist a couple times. And going back to some of our other questions or some of the things we've talked about before, there's thoughts that can come from three different places. They can come from God, they can come from ourselves, and they can come from Satan. And the counselor I'm talking to right now, he talks about intrusive thoughts, and that's what he would consider those that come from Satan. And it's being able to know what to do when those thoughts actually come. So, no, that's a very real thing that's happened to me. It's not something I'm super proud of, but it's just the reality of what it is.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are proud of that when we kind of can come back out of that and see in that moment that, wow, that could have created another tragedy, right? Thank you for sharing that with me. I know that's really hard. I'm glad that you were able to talk to your friend and explain to them in detail like what you were feeling so that you can get the help that you needed. So when you talk about everybody telling you what to do, and that was super frustrating for you, were you able to tell people like, back off, like I can handle this part? Or did you just go along with it because you're like, okay, it's making you feel better? Or could you see that they were doing it out of concern? Could you have that thought, or were you just like so annoyed that everybody was telling you?
No, I could see that it was
out of concern.
Yeah, it was out of concern. It was out of love. And you're one person that had come and talked to me, and you even told me people are going to tell you what to do, and just have grace and love people and understand where it comes from. And so I said, okay. I also looked at it as, what hill am I going to die on? That's even the way that I deal with in my marriage and things with my kids. there's hills I'm not going to die on. So it just doesn't matter. Even if I believe it should be the other way, or I believe we should do this or that, if it's not that big of a deal to me, then it just kind of, okay.
Who cares? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not somebody that always has to be right, or it always has to be my way, or it always has to be this. But there were some of those that were important to me. And those were the ones that I said, no, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say. I'm doing this.
And was good for you. I mean, if you knew that you needed to do that, then that was something that would be good for you.
Yeah.
I know you were very adamant about going and cleaning the boat, because everybody was like, no, we'll go clean the boat. You don't need to see it. You don't, and you're like, no, that's my responsibility. I want to go do that, and people finally gave way, but I think you needed that for part of your closure.
That was a hill I would have died on.
Yeah.
Like legitimately,
I'll fight you on this one.
No matter anyone I'm doing this.
Yeah.
No questions asked. You guys can.
This is my sacred right to go and clean this.
And there were a lot of people that said a lot of things about that.
Yeah.
Yourself included. Many people kind of thought this is not a good idea. Don't do it.
Yeah.
No, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do.
I understand it. At the time, I was kind of like, oh, I don't know. Like, that just seems so more trauma, but I understand why you had to do that.
And there were sad times there too. There were times that I had to just I had to sit there with some of my friends and say, can we stop for just a second and sit down, please?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had friends with you and that you didn't do it on your own.
Yeah.
That's good. There was something else I was thinking about that I was going to ask you about. So you talked about the different therapies. So tell me some of the therapies that you guys have, because I know that you've kind of tried some different types of therapies. Tell me what you've tried. Tell me what's worked and what you feel like, hasn't worked. Because I think that in just finding a therapist alone that we work with, I've always said that therapists are like shoes. You just got to keep trying them on until you find the right fit. Because not all therapists are going to work for you. Your personalities aren't going to clash. Or me, my personality ain't going to work. I got lucky, and I found a therapist that worked right away. And I know other people that have used that same therapist and didn't like him. So it just, it just depends. So what has worked for you? And what do you feel like probably was a little bit of a waste of my time, or I'm glad I did it, but I didn't want to stay with that anymore?
This is a good question. Some of it, I'll explain some things we've done, and some stuff I won't talk about yet, because I don't like to say things that we've done if it hasn't necessarily worked, or if there's some stuff that's in the middle of it might work, it might not.
Still in the process.
So, and I don't want to say, hey, I'm doing this, and then have someone try that, or have somebody not try it. So
Makes sense.
So there's some stuff that I'm not going to speak on.
Okay.
We had a grief counselor come over for both Camille and I to get collectively together.
Right away?
It was pretty close after. She had actually been contacted by 2 or 3 different people about our exact situation and about us. So that was good. She gave some good stuff in the first. We only met with her, I think, 2 or 3 times, and she gave some good stuff. So that was
helpful. And you're able to take it in. Good.
So I thought that was good. And then at that point, Camille wanted to kind of do some trauma stuff on her own, and the boys were doing some stuff. So I was kind of no therapy, if you will, for that little bit. Just kind of the self stuff of bike riding and moving and thinking and things like that, and trying to work and do stuff like that. Creating a video about the entire situation that happened, the accident that happened. And then Camille's done some other therapies also. I haven't done as much therapy wise as her. And then I've sought out a counselor or a therapist, and I've seen him a couple times.
So you talked about like riding your bike and exercising and stuff like that, but are those like the only coping strategies that you're using, or are you finding, how are you managing like the impact of this big explosion that's happened in your family? Like, what are some strategies that you're using on a day-to-day basis?
There's a lot of ways you can answer that. For me, some stuff would be some of like the therapy stuff, an ongoing discussion, battle, relationship with God because God plays a huge part in my life. I would say on that same token, doing a lot of the things that are, I think most people would try to do, like reading the scriptures and praying and things like that. It was very difficult for me right after the accident, and got a little bit better. And then it's also gotten a little bit worse all at the same time. It kind of fluctuates.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something I think I need to work through with reading the scriptures and praying and trying to understand.
That can be a little hard when you're angry at God to turn to God.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of one of those.
So it's something I definitely want to mention, but it's not that I've had others on the podcast that are like, yeah, I just turned to God. Everything was great. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It's not been, I turned to God. Everything was great and amazing. It's a hard thing. And it's something that I'm definitely working through and towards. Communication, still trying to do fun stuff, still trying to go on, do date night stuff, having fun with the kids, trying to do things.
Are you finding that you're able to have fun? You know, like when you guys go on a date night, does it end up, are you able to have fun? Are you able to feel joy in that moment? Or does it, and sometimes the date night just needs to be go so you guys can go cry alone together without your kids or something, or have a talk about something that you need to talk about. But are you able to find any joy yet in those experiences?
Yeah, definitely can. With an understanding that the joy can be robbed in an instant.
Taken away in a,
Yeah. Like literally a second. Yeah. You could go from the best day to another awful day in about a second.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be for one or the other. Like you could be doing just fine and then she's having a horrible day. Have you guys had moments, let's talk about the relationships part a little bit. Have you had moments where either one of you have been upset with the other one because you're not grieving the way that you think that they should be grieving? Or like, for example, I remember a couple of months after my son died, we went out with some friends, and my ex-husband, husband at the time, was we were bowling, and he was he was just like being silly, like doing these little jig dances or whatever. He was having a good time. And I was so angry at him for having a good time. Yeah. Like, how dare you have a good time when our son just died 6 months ago? You know, are you guys able to give each other that kind of space? Or are you finding that, you know, Camille's angry with you for not grieving the way she's grieving, or you're like disappointed? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, is just in a different way that you grieve. How are you coming to terms with that?
It definitely hasn't been perfect. Mm-hmm. And Camille might speak of this differently, and she'd have a different perspective because she would probably more so see some of the things that maybe I do to try to help her maybe do things differently. I don't necessarily see those in the way that I am right now. For her, a couple things is she kept being like, hey, you need to go see a counselor, or why aren't you seeing a counselor, or are you going to see a counselor? I guess she would say it more like that, not tell me I need to, but she would say, are you going to see a counselor? But it's with the tone of,
you need to be seeing a counselor. Yeah.
So questioning stuff like that, and the grief counselor was able to help us kind of come together on what she called it was, dang it, I forget the terminology. It was like mobile meditation. It wasn't mobile, but it was like movement meditation. And so that's what she was talking about, me having to go walk or go on bike rides and stuff, and being able to explain that's why he wants to go on a bike ride, is because that's how he wants to process and think about the accident and Sunni and everything that's going on. He wants to
which is perfectly
be in movement.
Yeah.
Right. And so I forget the actual term, being able to understand some of that stuff, and again, have grace with the fact that she's grieving different than I am. So just some stuff like that, on the communication wise, or even just the fact that we're doing it a little bit different.
So talk to me just a little bit about, because I remember going back right after Sunny died, we were sitting in a room and you just asked me, like, what happened to your marriage? Like, I think you were really worried about how this was going to impact your marriage. Am I correct in that? Because you were very curious about that. You asked me about that a couple of times. I don't know if you remember, but you asked me about that a couple of times. And I just thought to myself, he's worried. Like, he wants to make sure that he can do whatever he can to keep that from happening to them, having that experience, like that fracture that can kind of come in a relationship or whatever. Was that something that you were worried about, or was it just a curiosity that, you had of like my experience, or were you trying to navigate like what was ahead of you?
It's more of something that I've done my entire life. When somebody does get divorced that I know of, I really want to know. And it's not, I want to know because all the nitty gritty details and then I can go tell other people. It's because I look at it like a case study. I want to understand what happened. And then I either want to like do the things that are good or don't do the things that were bad or detrimental. Mm-hmm. If my goal is to make sure that my marriage stays, then I want to understand how marriages fall apart or how marriages stay together. And so it was more of that. And I knew that the statistic that people had thrown around were in the 70 or 80% of marriages end in divorce, especially, or when there is a child that has died. And I didn't want to be part of that statistic. Yeah. And I wanted to understand things that I could do to maybe prevent that from happening. So that's kind of like where that draws from.
I just thought it was such a good thing that I recognized that you were doing. And I thought that was so, you were being preventative, I think, in that area. I just remember thinking, wow, he's just really thinking, forward thinking and trying to prevent something. Because really what happens during the tragedy is everything falls apart and you're just trying to put all the pieces back together. And I felt like you were being really proactive and saying, this is the part that I don't want to fall apart, and I'm going to try to, prevent that from happening. And that's just what it seemed like from my observation as I was watching you, trying to gather information on that. Like, because, and I think, and luckily for me, I the people that I know, and like we've talked before, I think we have 8 or 9 families in our congregation that have done through this. I think I'm the only statistic that's come out of that. I don't think anybody else has gotten divorced because of this. So, and I did research it a little bit. I think the numbers have come down. The percentages have come down on marriages that end up in divorce after. So that's good. That's because I think we're using more therapies. We're more aware of it. We're, being more proactive. But that doesn't mean that, I don't want anybody to get the false idea that it isn't terrible and that your marriage goes through the ringer, in order to come through this.
It definitely changes. It changes things. It
yeah.
instantly changes everything.
How has that changed for you? Give me an example.
It changes how sensitive you are to one another and each other's feelings. And from like the father figure, husband figure of protection. And if Camille doesn't want to be somewhere, then I help get her out of that situation as quickly as I possibly can. From like an intimacy standpoint and physicality standpoint, it changes everything. It was like overnight switch.
Yeah.
Went from where I thought we were in like a really good place together, communication, to, and I read about it online too, where men oftentimes feel like they're losing 2 people because they lose the person that died and then the
one person that they
knew
turn to. Yeah.
They also kind of lose sometimes, especially from like a physical affection standpoint, is that can potentially like die for a time period. And so, yeah, it shifts everything.
Yeah. I thank you for sharing that, because I think that that's a real it's the reality, of people that go through this. Yeah, I think I just want people to understand that it is the reality of losing a child.
Yeah.
It's super difficult. And for people to think that, oh, they're coming through this really well, you have no idea. You can't possibly know.
Oh, I've been at church every week since. He must be doing great.
He must be doing great.
You don't know.
You don't know. Yeah. And you go to church every week because why? You want to feel the Spirit. You want to be there with God. You want to make sure that your kids are going to church each week. I'm sure it's all of that.
No, mainly just the first long bit of it was just so my kids were at church.
Just so your kids were at church.
I didn't even want to be there.
Yeah. But you needed some normalcy for your kids.
I just wanted them to be there. I knew that it would help them.
Surround them with people that love them.
Camille didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
So then the only option is either we don't go or I take them.
Yeah.
And so I was at church every week to help them.
Was that, other than the aspect of you not wanting to be there, was it difficult just to get to church, to be around people? Or did you feel like people were pretty loving to you?
I didn't really want to be around most of those people.
You didn't want to be around them?
Just that's the
general.
honest truth.
Yeah.
Because then everyone wants to ask how you're doing. And then that's the most hated question. The second most hated question is, how's your wife doing?
Yeah. Because what answer can you give them?
One, again, similar to what we just talked about. Okay, she can speak for herself.
Yeah.
And if anything, I'm going to be giving you input of my idea. The other thing is Camille and I have what I would say is a fairly good relationship. So she talks to me about things that she doesn't talk to you about,
right.
or talk to anyone
And
else
you're not
about.
going to go share that
And
with
I'm not going to
anyone.
be like, oh, I know the intricate
Yeah.
details of what her thoughts are, and I'm going to share that with you, who I only talk to you once a week, or
Yeah.
and no.
So have you come up with a response when people ask you, like, how are you, or how is your wife doing?
If people ask how I'm doing, I'll just say I'm okay, because I can justify that away of I'm great or I'm awful. Okay is a kind of an
In between?
and I can just say I'm okay. And I can just leave it at that. And so that satisfies the, hey, how you doing?
The
type
politeness of
the just like, hey, are
greeting.
you actually asking how I'm doing, or are you just saying hi? Because generally within our culture, just here in the United States and in like Arizona where we live, people will say, hey, how you doing? And that's just kind of a hi.
Yeah,
right?
good. How are you?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And
Yeah.
so if I hear it like that, then a lot of times I'll just, out of nicety or whatever, I'll say, I'm good,
Yeah.
or I'm good or whatever, or I'll say I'm okay. And then just leave it at that. When people ask about Camille, a lot of times I'll say, that's a really difficult question.
Yeah.
And here's why. And then I'll explain a little bit, and then I just leave it at that.
Yeah. And do you find that they're receptive to it, or they're like, oh, wow, I wasn't asking for all of that?
Well, some of them are, it's, and like the reality is, what am I going to say anyways?
Exactly. Yeah.
And how do you think she's doing?
Yeah.
So I just say, that's a really hard question,
As good as can be expected, I guess,
Yeah.
I try to, when I check in on Camille, I try to say, how are you doing today?
Yeah,
Because it's different every day.
it is.
And it could be different in the afternoon than it was in the morning, or how are you doing right now? Is probably even better. But I think just being too general is unfair.
Yeah.
It's kind of unfair for.
And I know that people are curious, and then I also know that people care. And so I never take it as I'm offended that you even asked me that.
Yeah.
It's just a question that I dread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know how to answer it
Yeah.
in a way that's going to make them walk away feeling good about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. What did you find? You don't have to give me specifics because I don't want anybody to say, oh my gosh, I said that. But, we've talked before about what is helpful and what's not helpful for people. Because people want to know, like, what can they do? They feel so inadequate.
I think the best thing is using the scriptures, mourn with those that mourn. And we talked about this in a podcast recently that I interviewed somebody, and I said, see how it said mourn with those that mourn, not give advice to those who mourn.
Yeah.
Right? It didn't mean open your scriptures and start to try to like tell me some gospel truth or tell me some this or tell me that. It says sit there with me and mourn with me.
Mm-hmm. What does that look
Cry
like
with
to you?
me. Hug me.
Okay.
Just be there.
Yeah. check in on you.
It doesn't say God has a great plan for you. No. It doesn't say she's
This all
in a
happened
better
for a
place.
reason, and you'll
No, it's none of that.
Yeah.
It's I'm so sorry for your loss, and I love you.
Yeah. Have you found anything that was really special that somebody did for you that you thought was really like just so thoughtful? Like, for example, when my son died, he had a really good friend. She was a female friend. They were like best friends. And the father was a good friend of mine as well. He went and bought like a frame and went and got Ben's Spirit of the Eagle Award because he was ready to turn in his eagle. I didn't know there was a thing called that, but he brought it over to me, and it just touched me so much that he took the time to go do that on his own, to go get that Spirit of the Eagle Award, and then go and find a frame to put it in and bring it to me. And I don't know, maybe because that's my love language, but it just meant so much to me that he thought about me in such a particular way. And then that family to this day still sends me on Ben's birthday a pack of toilet paper and some candy, some Starburst, because every time it was his birthday, they would come and like TP his room or something with, Starburst and toilet paper. And then he would do that to her. And so here we are 16 years later, and they still mail it to me. And sometimes it costs more for them to ship it because they've moved than it does to just, buy the stuff. So it's always so touching to me that they do that. So has there been anything that has been really meaningful that someone has done that you just touched you so much?
I can't think of one thing that was just over the top amazing. At the funeral and viewing, people made a memory room of her. All that stuff was blown away by. The video that was made, I helped make the video too. There was a bubblegum machine that was there because she wanted a bubblegum machine for her birthday. I guess to me, some things that have been very meaningful is at a moment's notice, I could call 2 or 3 different friends and say, I just need you to pick me up right now.
And that means a lot. Yeah. And I didn't ask that question because I don't want people to think that you have to do this big grand gesture or you have to do anything that, is spectacular or anything like that. I just asked because I think that there's, like you said, like that's just super meaningful to you right now where you are.
And there was one time where I was in the middle of something, messaging somebody like, hey, can you come get me? I'm having just an awful day. Can you just come get me? Mm-hmm. He's like, yeah, I'll be there in a little bit. I was like, I got to get the kids to bed, some other stuff. And the whole night just ended up being kind of a disaster. I needed to end up being here at home and I had to like cancel. And he had come and just like sat in front of my house waiting for me to come out. And I was like, dude, I'm sorry. Like, it just hasn't turned out the way that I thought it was going to. And I still need to be here. Everyone pretty much in the house is having a bad night. And I just need to be here to help make sure that kids go to bed, that Camille can be where she's at. And just, I'm so sorry that I had you drive all the way over here. He was like, no problem, dude. I was just reading a book or had a phone call with his sister or something. I can't remember. But just knowing that I could.
And he would be there.
Yeah, I could say, hey, I need you. And then he's here. And then at the same time, I could say, I'm sorry. Things changed.
And he's not annoyed by it or anything.
Yeah, and he's just, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. And really, my reason for asking that is I just want people to be, if they have a good thought, to do it, to act on it. And it is meaningful. It's important. And we appreciate it because we feel loved by that, whether it's a small thing like just coming in, waiting outside your house or, sending something in the mail, like, is happening for me. But it's important. So if you have a good thought, act on it.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
So,
because people would always ask me, what can I do to help?
Yeah.
And my response for a long time was, I don't know, But the best thing to do is God knows. So if you feel like God's asking you to do something, just do it, please.
Yeah.
And I will willingly accept, especially if you say, I felt like I should do this, or God told me to do this. Then I would say, I'll just willingly take the service. Because guess what? I don't even know what I need.
Right.
Even right now, 5.5 months, I don't even know what I need.
Yeah. Is it still, do you feel like you're able to ask for help? Like if you
It's
know,
really hard for me to ask for help.
I know it is hard for,
That's just truth.
I know it's true. But if you were like in our church, we bring meals to people like when they're going through or whatever. And so do you feel like you could say, hey, we're just having a dumb fire day. You wouldn't do that.
I probably wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's just the truth of it. I would figure out something to do, but I wouldn't ask for help probably.
Because you don't want to impose on anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand that.
I don't even think it's
but
like...
no one would feel that way. They would just be like,
I know.
you know.
And I've had people just be like, hey, we're going to bring you something tonight. And I was like, oh, okay. I'll like accept it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not one that would just reach out and say, hey, I need this tonight.
Have you found that you guys have been able to do any like normal like things? Like have you been able to go on a vacation together? And if you did, was it a good experience? Or would you like, this was a disaster, we should have waited a little bit longer? Or, you know, are you finding like little spots where you're having little glimpses of happiness or joy? Can you feel that yet? Or are you still just going through the motions?
For me, I can say I can still feel it. And again, like I said before, knowing full well that the happiness and joy could be robbed in a second. Yeah. And have we done some family vacations? Yeah, we've been able to do some family vacations. Some were very stressful. Some were not so stressful. Some were good. We were able to go visit Sunny's grave. That was nice.
Because Sunny is not buried
She's
here.
She's not buried
in
here in Arizona. And so I think it's been a double-edged sword on all of those things.
Yeah.
I think even every time that your family, our entire family gets together, it's kind of a double-edged sword because, yeah, it's nice to be around family, but it's also this blatant, huge reminder, Sunny's not here. Just so you know, she's not here.
Yeah. And do you all feel it like we're feeling it, you know? Are you?
No, they know that. No, I know they don't feel it. It's more of like, well, they might feel it, but I don't think that they feel it to the degree that
they're aware of it.
And honestly, for me, I probably don't feel it as much, and I'm more fine being in those circumstances. It comes from a protector standpoint of seeing the pain that it causes Camille. And so understanding how that dynamic is and being willing to me just be there with the kids and the other family members and stuff because I know how much pain it can cause her. Mm-hmm. So it's seeing that pain. That's the tough thing for me. It's not necessarily being with the family.
Yeah. Yeah. That double-edged sword is a hard one to live with, you know, and honestly, you don't want to rob their joy.
No.
You don't want to take that away from them, and you don't want to
or take the kids' joy away either. Too. Like let's just only sit at home. Like that's not good either.
Right. Or be the wet blanket that's at the event, you know, because you can't feel the same level of happiness that they're feeling, and you don't want to ruin it for them. I know it's a messy circumstances when it comes to stuff like that, and you just have to do the best you can. You know, sometimes you can go and then you're like, peace out, I can't do this right now, you know, and be okay with that. How has any of your relationships been influenced or changed by Sunny's passing?
Well, part of how I would want to answer that is from a friendship standpoint. Some have gotten stronger, and I've even gained some friends based off of just my current circumstance or situation.
As having another loss in common, or just because you've met them through?
Kind of both.
Kind of both.
If we maybe like go back in time a year to 2 years from Sunny's accident, if that same thing would have happened, I would have felt essentially alone. No friends, no support group. Even though I like go to church and I have people kind of around me, I essentially was a stay-at-home dad, working from home, doing all stuff from home. So I didn't really have any network of people around
And you
me.
were new,
And I was new
in this area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I would say I didn't really know anyone. And if I did, it was just kind of a superficial, I know you.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't any type of connection. And so even if this stuff had happened maybe a year prior, the whole accident would have happened, I would have been in a completely different place from a support standpoint.
Having strangers trying to support you that would
Yeah.
have felt like strangers.
Yeah. But because it happened when it did, the actual direct community, I would say, around me being my individual friends, I've already fostered relationships with certain people. And so it was just it was an eye-opening experience to know that the way the timing took place, I had support that I would have otherwise not had.
Which is a blessing that, you know, you may not have been able to. I mean, now that you're looking back on it, you can see that that's a blessing, that is God's hand in your life.
Yeah.
During that, you know, even though you're mad, you can still be mad at God and still recognize that his hand is in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From other relationships, it's definitely changed Camille and I's relationship. If we end up doing a couples podcast, it would be more interesting to have both of our perspectives on that. It changes stuff.
Yeah.
And we've talked a little bit about that.
Yeah. And just so those that are listening, Camille's just not ready yet, which is totally understandable.
Yeah.
And she's going to see how this goes to see if she can feel like it's something that she can participate in, and totally understand.
I want to go back to the relationship with the kids,
Okay.
because it has definitely changed that and shifted that.
Okay.
I don't know if it did with you. It totally did with me. A huge amount of patience came into my life because things just didn't seem that big anymore. If someone spills water on the table or rice gets spilt or whatever, things just aren't a big deal as what they used to be. And so I wish I could have shifted this mindset before Sunny. And so I would have been even elevated my parenting even more, but it shifted myself as a parent of, okay, how can I react better to certain situations? Am I perfect? No. Do I still react in ways that I'm not super grateful or that I'm not super proud of? Yeah, I have since then, but I've been more patient with stuff and letting things transpire that before I would have just been like, I'm not dealing with this crap. I've let a lot more things kind of go, but also helping the boys to try to improve their life situation where they're at and help them and try to do it in a more loving way than what I did before.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I like that you said that, you know, now there's a bigger awareness of what you get upset over versus what doesn't really matter. And I did have that same experience. I used to be a real big control freak.
Yeah.
Like micromanage my kids and all this kind of stuff. And after the accident, when Ben died, there was just, I probably went too far the opposite direction because then everything was like, anything goes. I don't care. You don't want to clean your room? Don't clean your room. I don't care. That's not a fight I'm going to have with you. You know, just, and then you kind of come back. I've kind of come back into the middle. It's taken time, but I kind of came back, you know, and, you know, shifted again. But for sure, I think that there is, you just have a different perspective and just some things just don't matter anymore.
And I want to try to keep that perspective, honestly. And I've seen some stuff shift back or divert back to previous how I've been. And I need to continually remind myself what's important.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the moment, does it make you mad that a watermelon was dropped and split open on the kitchen floor? Yes. In the grand scheme of things, does that matter?
No, it's just a mess to clean up and, you know.
And then the other thing that I've had to work on is, yes, I kind of have this mentality of that doesn't matter. But then I think it's a big deal when other people think that it's a big deal.
Like you get upset for somebody from getting annoyed by something small.
Why is this such a big deal to you?
Yeah.
And then I have to take a step back and look at my life and say, wait.
They're coming from a different perspective.
Also, but now I'm thinking that it's a big deal that they're thinking that it's a big deal when I need to be like, hey, it's actually not that big of a deal that they think it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? Because then
Yeah.
I'm forcing myself to get back into that mindset of everything's a big deal when I need to be like, hey, I need to have grace with people and understand that if they think it's a big deal, oh, well, who cares?
Yeah.
That's not a hill that I need to make a fight on.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. And then have you seen the dynamic with the boys? Has that shifted at all? Did you notice that they've experienced any like behavior problems or anything? Or are you able to pinpoint that and say that's just a grief thing that they're going through yet? Or do you feel like you're still...
There's some stuff that existed before the accident. I think things then were amplified because of the accident.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And it's still hard to, again, dissect that. If that is because of the accident, because of the trauma, because of the grief, or is it just you're a 4-year-old, you're a 10-year-old, and this is how you act. So it's difficult.
Yeah.
But I definitely have seen shifts and adjustments.
Yeah. And it'll shift and adjust again as, the time goes on. Just like, when we talked about the therapies, as time goes, what didn't work before, you're going to need to switch it up, sometimes like that. Just, that's the way it goes,
And one thing that has been a theme through almost all the people that we have interviewed, all of them have said, I can see how this has impacted my children's lives.
Yeah.
My adult children now, their lives and where they're at. And many, many people that have sat in my chair have said, I don't think that my kids even see how it's impacted them.
Mm.
And so it has, and as a parent, you can see how it's impacted your child's life. So it's been interesting to see almost collectively all parents have said that for their other kids, that this accident or whatever happened in their life, the death that happened of one of their children had impacted all of the siblings of that child.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. As my adult children, they would say that it impacted their life. It changed the trajectory of their life for sure.
Yeah.
And just as a family dynamic, everything has changed in your family, and it's really hard to learn how to live with that space, that person, that Sunni in your family, not being there, functioning like that. You got to change all the rules of how you function. It's hard.
Yeah. And I say it now of the boys. I hate that. I have to say that.
The boys. Yeah.
Even though I use it a lot.
But that wasn't something that you used to say before. You just say the kids. Yeah. 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 It almost makes it sound like you're, and you don't mean it to sound this way, but it almost makes it sound like you're kind of like, pushing her out or something. I don't know if that's how you're feeling, but
it's just a reminder.
A reminder that she's not there.
She's not there.
Yeah.
There's times where I'm introduced to people and people have already told them a little bit about my story. So they already know. And then they don't know what to say or not to say.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. They're kind of tapped
And so they don't know what. And so there's been a couple different instances where we've then gotten into stuff and they had questions or they wanted to know a little bit more about Sunni. And I was told, I want to talk about her.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just been some of those where they purposely didn't ask some of those questions because
they knew ahead of time.
They already knew a little bit of my story.
Yeah. And do you appreciate that? Or, I mean, because
I just feel bad. I just feel bad to put people in that situation. I never like to
make somebody uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you're still so fresh in it though that I don't think that's your worry. I'm giving you a free pass on that one. Anyways, okay, so tell me where you are. I mean, you're 5 months out. Where are you in your journey in healing? The
intent of this question when we wrote it was so that people could give like a linear answer of I'm like 16 years removed.
But not necessarily the emotional thought of it.
It's not necessarily like
I'm healed.
I'm good. I'm great, And so
I know it's kind of an awkward
question. I don't
question.
really like the question.
But I'm going to give it to you.
I know. But so maybe we can come up with another question after this that is maybe more of what we're trying to like get at. So currently where I'm at in my journey of grief or journey of healing is it's only been 5.5 months since Sunny died. It's been 5.5 months. And I've had tons of ups and downs in that time period. I've been lower than the lowest point I've ever been in my entire life. And I went from one of the happiest times I've ever been in my life prior to the accident to then some of the saddest and most difficult times I've ever been in my life. And thinking about this interview, I've thought about it for multiple days because I knew it was coming. So I was curious of how I would answer some of the things. One of the emotions I did want to bring up that I did feel right after, amid all of the other things definitely drowned this out. But I wanted to be transparent with one of the emotions that I did feel, and I did feel a decent amount of embarrassment.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
In what way?
Because it was on a boat, and I'm in the
And you're
whole
a
boating
boating
world,
expert,
and
yeah.
this is what it is. And it was my child on my boat, and so there was a decent amount of embarrassment that went on with that. And I know some people would be like, "Oh, that's so awful that you would feel embarrassment in such a situation like that. It should just be grief and all these other things." I at least wanted to be transparent with the feelings that I had. I did mention that the grief, the shock, the anger, and all the other emotions actually were exceeded what the embarrassment was,
yeah.
but there
But
was
it was
still
still
a
an emotion.
level that was there.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to, I think, maybe like a car accident could be, is like, oh, I took the wrong turn, or I was going this fast, or whatever.
I made a
Is there
mistake.
some level of
Yeah.
embarrassment that could be involved with some of those accidents that do happen? And so I've heard other people in my seat say, "I'm in a good spot now," or "I'm happy," or I think your terminology you used was, "I am happy with where my life's at," or "I'm glad, I like where my life is at." Currently, I'm in the midst of trying to figure out some things with God. That's very difficult to me. Similar to how you said, I have a free pass for this. I've had almost this thought and emotion of this entitlement that God owes me something.
Oh.
Because he did this, he owes me. With the knowledge and understanding that God has already suffered and overcome all of it, right? He's already overcome the pain. He's already overcome my pain. He's already overcome Camille's pain. And he has already overcome Sunny's pain. He's overcome physical death for all of us and the opportunity for us to overcome spiritual death. I believe all of that. Yet I still have this thought or this feeling that he owes me because he did this to me.
So, okay, tell me, take away all the stuff that you just said, all the stuff that you know about God and what he's done. If you take that away, what is left that he owes you?
You can't do that though. You just can't take away all that stuff because he's already done everything.
Your knowledge of all of that, I guess, is what I'm saying. If you take away the knowledge of that, and say you didn't have a belief
He
system
owes
in
me
God,
something. I would say he owes me something.
but can you
financial gain, financial stability, just a happy life, better things? He owes me something.
That's how you're feeling right now.
Somewhat. I also have come to the fact that I understand he doesn't owe me anything, but that doesn't change the way that I feel, right? And so it's trying to align the way that I feel with what I think God wants, right? And I think we can use some examples from the scriptures of like Joseph, who was sold into Egypt by his brothers. He could have felt like he was owed a lot of things, right? And then he felt like he was in a good spot. And then he got sent to prison because he didn't sleep with the like king's
Potiphar's
wife or whatever,
yeah.
right? And he could have been again like, "Man, you owe me." And again, there's multiple instances there where
he could have had the attitude of you owe me. So as I've thought about it and I've talked with a couple different people on this, they've lovingly talked to me and didn't necessarily tell me you're wrong in your thinking, but gave examples and lovingly talked to me to get myself to kind of
Switch your focus a little bit.
figure that out a little bit.
Yeah. Have you found that helpful with what they said? Does it give you
Yeah.
something to think about?
No, it has.
Good.
And I think I'm definitely, if we would have had this interview 2 days ago, I would be in a different place than I am currently on this. Within some of the stuff I've read, some of the scripture study I've done, praying to God, I would say I'm more willing to say whatever you want is I'm okay with to God.
Do you believe that yet? Or are you trying to get there?
It's definitely a process. I would say I'm closer to that than I was yesterday. And I'm closer to that today than I was 2 days ago.
Which is a hard thing to do when you don't even understand why it happened in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But willing to, yeah. And Christ himself said it too, of if there's another way, let there be another way. But if it's not, then it's going to be your way. And I'm gonna do it your way.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it your way, God. And so, yeah, it's trying to align my feelings with my belief system and understanding again that thoughts and impressions can come from 3 different places.
Mm-hmm.
So was it me that formulated this thought? Could be. Or was it me that took a thought that was given to me from Satan and magnified it and
let it
festered
grow
with
and
it
fester, yeah.
Right? I don't know the right answer to either one of those, but
Yeah. Either
it's
way.
just being truthful with one thing that I'm feeling and a struggle that I'm currently having.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, because I think that's a really, 2 things that I really appreciate you sharing. Because I'd never thought about it before. The embarrassment that you talked about. That never occurred to me that would have been an emotion that you were feeling. So it gives me a different understanding a little bit about just watching you as you've gone through this. So I appreciate that you've been, you were able to put that into words and that you were able to share, because I'm sure that there's other people.
And even more on that, then there's also anger and embarrassment that I even feel
Embarrassed. Yeah.
Like, why should you feel embarrassed?
You didn't do anything to, you know.
Not even that. Why should you feel so embarrassed when there's so many bigger things than that?
Yeah.
That's so selfish of you to think of yourself in that situation instead of just grieving your child.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. And I really had never thought about that before. So thank you for sharing that. And then your thought about that God owes you something, I think that's a hard thing to say. And I think that I just think that is could put you in a really vulnerable place to verbalize that. Because most people don't say, like, oh, God owes me something, or I want this from God, or I expect this from God, or whatever. And so I think that could feel a little vulnerable to put that to voice and, say that. So,
and it goes a little bit with what I talked about at the beginning of maybe sharing some stuff that I don't think is right.
Yeah.
But it's still how
it's
I'm
a feel.
feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see, as you talked about this, interviewing again later in the grieving process, to see if that shifts, if that changes, where you'll come to find peace with that, and then when we talked about the sorrow that you feel, there's always that counter to it. Like your joy will be, and I know you can't believe this yet, there will be a day where your joy will be as great as the depth of your sorrow, because the scriptures talk about that, that talks about that, and we're promised that. And
it's hard to see.
I know it's hard
to hear.
I know it is.
And I get it. And I understand the truth. I haven't seen it formulate in my life, other than the fact that I've seen that I went from the joyous I've ever been
to the depths of your
to
sorrow.
the worst I've ever.
And there's the juxtaposition in it, right? And I know you can't see it right now because you're too deep in the grief. But there will be. there will be a time that you'll be able to look back and be like, okay, I have happiness in my life again, or I'm feeling joy, or I'm feeling peace. All those things that you're robbed of right now, you can have again in your life. I promise you that will happen. And I don't say that lightly. I know it through experience that you will find that again. I said it before, I said at the beginning, I'm just so proud of what you're doing, because you've been able to find a way to take your grief and use it for good. And not everybody can do that. And you've had the courage to do that. I wanted to do that. And I kept saying I would, but in reality, I didn't have the courage to do it. And you do. And so I thank you for that. And I know that a lot of people are benefiting from this.
Thank you.
So there's one thing that I read a while back, and I just loved it. That it's from Dr. Lois Torkin. And she said, people think that grief slowly gets smaller in time, but in reality, grief stays the same size, but life slowly begins to grow bigger around it. And I think that is so true. That really had an impact on me. And I hope that that's for you and your family, that your life can grow bigger around this grief as time goes on. So thanks for sharing your thoughts with us today and being so vulnerable and being real. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us on the Lost Child podcast. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. And remember, shine bright, and we'll see you in the next episode.